A major financial institution in Mumbai decides to automate their entire loan approval process using a high risk AI system. Within weeks, the system begins rejecting loan applications from an entire zip code, not because the people are poor credit risks, but because the AI mistakenly associated that area with a historical dip in economic activity from a decade ago. This is the black box reality of high risk AI, where the machine learns patterns that humans didn't intend for it to pick up. In ISO 42001, risk management is defined as the coordinated activities to direct and control an organization with regard to risk. Simply put, it is a process of asking what could go wrong here and how bad would it be. When you are dealing with credit approval, the stakes are massive because you are directly affecting people's livelihoods, housing, and financial futures. If the system is biased, the organization faces legal penalties, massive brand damage, and a complete loss of public trust. We are not just managing bits and bytes, we are managing the real world impact on human lives. Every line of code has a consequence. So, now that we've mastered the core reason for identifying risk in high stakes environments, you might be wondering how we officially categorize these threats before they spiral out of control. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is the risk identification phase. Picture a project team in New Delhi sitting around a whiteboard for 3 hours trying to figure out every possible way their credit AI might fail. They brainstorm everything from data poisoning, where a hacker intentionally feeds the AI bad data to skew results, to simple model drift, where the AI's logic decays over time as economic conditions shift. Risk identification is the formal process of finding, recognizing, and describing risks. In simple terms, it is just the what if game. You have probably seen this at the office where a colleague asks, "What if the power goes out during the update?" Or, "What if our training data is missing a whole gender or demographic?" In this credit system, we identify risks like data bias, lack of explainability, and security vulnerabilities. You need to look at your system from the perspective of an attacker, a frustrated user, and a regulator. If you don't list the risk, you can't manage it. You are basically casting a wide net to catch every potential problem, no matter how small, before it becomes a headline in the news. So, now that we've mastered the art of playing the what if game to catch potential failures, you might be wondering how we measure which of these risks is actually dangerous. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is risk analysis and evaluation. You are sitting in a conference room in Bangalore, looking at a long list of identified risks for your credit AI. Now you have to prioritize. You have to decide, is a slight delay in processing the same as systematic discrimination against a minority group? Of course not. Risk analysis is the process of understanding the nature of risk and determining the level of risk. Simply put, it is math mixed with common sense. You calculate the likelihood of the event happening, multiplied by the severity of the damage. If a risk is unlikely but catastrophic, like an AI system leaking private financial data to the public, that gets the highest possible priority. If it is a minor glitch that happens daily but is fixed instantly with a simple reboot, that is a lower risk. This is exactly where auditors look for consistency. You cannot just guess these values. You need a logical, defendable framework to back up why you think a risk is high, medium, or low. If you can't explain your scoring, you can't defend your governance. So now that we have mastered how to score our risks based on their potential to do damage, you might be wondering what we actually do with these scores once the math is done. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is the risk treatment phase. Think of a cybersecurity firm in Chennai that has identified a high risk of prompt injection, where users trick the AI into giving away confidential credit information about other applicants. They don't just sit there and worry about it, they treat it. Risk treatment is the process of selecting and implementing measures to modify risk. In simple words, it means deciding how to fight the fire. You have 4 main options. You can avoid the risk, reduce the risk, share the risk, or accept the risk. In our credit scenario, we would choose to reduce it by adding a human in the loop layer, a real person who reviews any automated rejection decisions made by the AI. This is a critical control. By adding this layer, we effectively lower the risk to an acceptable level. As an auditor, I love seeing this because it shows that the organization isn't just complaining about problems. They are actively engineering solutions to make the system safer. They are building a fence around the problem. So, now that we have mastered the strategy of choosing how to fight our risks, you might be wondering how we ensure these treatments stay effective over the long haul. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is the monitoring of controls. Imagine a tech hub in Pune where they have installed all the safety guardrails for their credit AI, but they haven't checked them in 6 months. Meanwhile, the AI has started learning from new messy data that has introduced fresh biases. Monitoring is the systematic checking, supervising, and observing to identify change from the performance level required. In simple words, it is keeping your finger on the pulse of the system. You need dashboards, automated alerts, and regular reporting. Think of it like a pilot flying a plane. They don't just set the autopilot and go to sleep. They constantly scan the instruments for altitude, speed, and wind direction. Your AI monitoring dashboard is your cockpit instrument panel. If the bias level creeps up or the error rate spikes, you need an alert to hit your phone immediately. This is the difference between a proactive company that prevents failure and a reactive one that just cleans up the mess. You need to verify that your guardrails haven't rusted over. So, now that we've mastered the need for constant real-time monitoring of our safety guardrails, you might be wondering how we prove all this hard work to the people who give us our certification. Well, that brings us right into our next step, which is documentation and accountability. To wrap up our journey, consider a major corporation in Kolkata that successfully passed their ISO 42001 audit. They didn't pass because they had the best AI code. They passed because they had the best documentation. Documentation is the evidence that the management system actually exists. It includes the risk assessment records, the treatment plans, and the proof that someone reviewed the system's performance. As an auditor, I am looking for the risk register. It is a living document that tracks every risk we identified, how we scored it, and how we treated it. If you can't show me that document, you haven't managed the risk, you've just worried about it. When you hold your risk register, you are holding the story of your organization's integrity. You are proving that you didn't just build a smart machine, but a responsible one. You are telling me, here is what I saw, here is how I calculated the danger, and here is how I protected our users. You have now moved from the fear of the unknown to the discipline of the managed. You have all the tools you need to be a top-tier lead auditor.